So, Sadi, are you comfortable enough if I just do the intro and then we can...
Absolutely.
And then, we can just riff it from that, sort of, and I have I thought I would come back to the image that I started with, which is Donald Schoen's idea of the mountaintop and the swamp, sort of, and that is what I do in my practice for a long time, translating between the mountaintop and the swamp. But actually, I think a nice element of this is the fact that I needed to go back to the mountaintop to see some of the issues in my swamp. Okay, right? And to me, as I've thought about it, we can have conversations with colleagues in the department or wherever, okay? But there are people who, they're in the same area as us, they're in the same, sort of, they may have different perspectives or whatever it is. But I think the thing that distinguishes here is the quality of conversations because of the different backgrounds, the different perspectives, the different disciplines. I had the same conversation over lunch today, and she said to me this whole thing about, I'm a historian, that's a sociologist. You sometimes just have to explain some of the things you take for granted, okay? And that brings you to a different place.
Because the best way to learn is to teach. So you're forced to clarify your own thought to transmit it. But there's something more here. Is that there's no pecking order. Yeah. When you're in your own department, in fact, there's a bit of a rivalry. It's not just the fact that we're in the same swamp. Yeah. It's I've often noticed that people would hesitate talking about what they're doing before it's published. Yeah. Because the audience might actually use their ideas. Okay. Yes. Here, these guys are not going to use their ideas. They're working on something different, and they're benevolent. There is no kind of calculation or anything. So it's pretty free speech. You're much freer to speak here than you would be in your own department. That's the amazing. It's liberating. I mean, there's the normal thing about discussion being a way to force you to clarify your ideas, to open new avenues, and so this has been known for a long time. But here, what you get is you have different people with different background, different experience, different skill set in intellectual terms, in methodologies or theories, and they sort of can take you to what we call the next level. I don't know if it's a higher level or a further, but I've always been fascinated by this notion of the proximal zone of development of Vygotsky. Right? So stuff you can't do yourself, but if you're guided, you can actually move. And so people here would actually facilitate you to take a step in directions where you would not be able to go because you just don't know, right? And then they would say, but have you read so and so? But of course you have not read so and so. But then they will start to explain. Yeah. This is why it would be interesting to read so and so because they did this and they did that, and then suddenly you see something that connects with what you have, and then you're able to take the step. And maybe you're going to read so and so. But so that's the kind of thing that happened, and it would not happen spontaneously if we would not put people in this space, because this is a space, this is a platform, we put people together, and it's like in a kind of reactor, or chemical reactions. You have to force the conditions of heat, pressure, and the existence of the various components, so you get something different. So this is what we do. We bring the space, we put people in it, and then we have these processes to force a little bit, gently, like the lunch.
I remember you telling me, and I couldn't get my head around this. There are a few basic requirements. You come here, and one thing is that you have to have lunch. And I'm thinking, how does this sound? This sounds almost too much like Sadi, sort of. But actually, it is the most powerful thing to get people together every day when you've spent time thinking in the morning. And to build on the thought you had there, they bring you forward by bringing you back, okay? Because some of those conversations you have over lunch, you've been moving forward and thinking about these things and you've been going to funny places, but you nearly need to go back to make the connection to move forward.
Okay. That's interesting. I was thinking naively of the nudge as, when you eat with people, they can't be your enemy.
Yes.
And there's something about human beings, like if you have shared food, like you have something in common. You need an enormous amount of trust when you're in your proximal zone, because you're hesitating. And so if you're not sure what you're saying, like you feel like maybe they're going to think I'm stupid because I don't really know, you don't dare to ask or whatever. But if it's with trusted people, you can actually accept your ignorance.
Yeah.
And ignorance can be openness, right? It's a gift. I've always thought that there's a kind of heuristic of ignorance, because if you read too much of the literature, anything pre-formats what you perceive, right? And so you need to accept to be unformatted if you want to do something really different, which is what we want here. We want people to go beyond what they would have done in their usual environment. And so accepting that you're ignorant and there may be something else, you have to be open to the suggestions of other people, and lunch is a great place for this, or the wine and conversation. The idea that you must put people in a demilitarized zone. This is what we do with our universities also, because they're also a bit in competition. But when they're here, there's no competition here. It's just cooperation. I think human beings are always, because they're both cooperative and competitive, they are hierarchical, and so but the good thing is to use this is not competition, it is emulation. You want to do more together. And
well, it's strange you say that, and it's strange you say how the various processes and they come to work, because even as I think about it more, and I said a little bit earlier how important it was to sit at lunch beside someone, but if I think where the germ of that idea came from, it came from the first night that I came, and we stood together in the drinks reception, and she said to me, tell me what you do, right? Okay, and then she had been thinking about that, and she forced me to think about it a little bit more the next time we met. But again, it's that wonderful Vygotskian notion of ignorance and the like. It was the trust in being able to say that, right? From her ignorance point of view, saying, well, please, you tell me, and tell me in a way that I might understand, okay? And that was good for her, that was good for me. It gave her time to process, and then it gave her time to give me some feedback,
And there's another thing that we try to do here is because people come with an idea and a specific topic, and actually what we're interested usually is having people get to that next level. And one question we ask them is, what is the general problem of which your research is one specific case, right? And so to go deeper into something more generic, what's important beyond the specific case, and this forces you to clarify and sort of to get rid of all this theoretical vernacular with which you dress your stuff, right? Like, what's actually the core human existential problem that's behind it? And because you're talking with people from other fields or other disciplines, you need to come to a level of generality that they can understand. Because if you speak, with your very specific stuff, they don't. And this forces you to go beyond all this apparatus of theories and terms and terminology that we use to make ourselves feel more scientific, perhaps, but then to go to the core, the kind of thing that people usually call silly questions, the difficult ones. They go like that. Why are you doing research on that? What are you talking about? And of course, if you discuss that with, as you said, someone asks you sincerely, I really want to understand, but then try to explain to me, okay? Then you're forced to sort of take away all this skin and go to the bone, like, this is my problem.
I think that's lovely.
I love that.
Something you said there, somebody once said to me that sometimes when you get so detailed into and when we become so in love with our subjects and so specialist areas, we almost lose connection with reality, because we live in a referenced reality. We live in a way of thinking about it because of references that exist.
Absolutely, yeah.
And something like this forces you to think, well, how do I connect with the real world? How does it connect with ways of, again, this idea that we spend a lot of time sense making. I guess what it forces you to do is to be a sense giver, right, to other people in a way that they can understand.
Absolutely. And sadly, because a lot of our time in research is in a way justifying where we are within the field or advancing the career, etc. We spend a lot of time referring to other people in the field. I know we're all like dwarfs on the head of giant, shoulders of giants and everything, but you know, a lot of what we're doing is not about trying to understand the core of the matter and all these social aspects of positioning in the field. And to some extreme, some people in academia are just doing, you know, discourse on discourse, yes, instead of discourse, yeah, on the phenomena, which is our job in the, yeah, the great division of labor of society. Yeah. And here, because you're away from this academic game, you can focus on what's important, yeah, which is your research on the phenomenon and not your position in the field. And we try to keep that kind of, yeah, it's a social bubble, but it's not isolated from the phenomena because precisely you have more time to work on what you're supposed to do. Yeah.
And we've known each other for years, and we come from similar types of backgrounds before we came into academia, and we've had lots of conversations about theory and practice and the like, and that's a theme that came out in my work. And you've been trying to persuade me for a long time to come here, and for various reasons it didn't work, but the 1-month fellowship has been sort of a relatively recent innovation, right? That has allowed people to come on this writing period. And I often wondered what you could do in a month. And in a way, you pulled a trick on me because, you know, I came here for a month and it's been very difficult for me to forget it for the subsequent 7 months because it almost sort of, you've got 8 months work out of me, okay, because what was planted as a seed then starts to grow.
I'm sorry about that, Barry.
No?
But no, I'm not sorry. I mean, that's what happened to me, okay, yeah, when I came here. It enabled me to actually really start the first chapter of what became a big book. Yeah. Because there's moments where you need to have unfragmented time to think, yeah, right? And that's the most difficult moment, that's starting it, right? Yeah. Getting the vision and sort of understanding that you can actually do it. But yeah, we're so much torn apart by all the little everyday interruptions and needs, etc. We don't have time for a bit of deep thought, but once you've had that, it's like it started and it goes forward, and that's what the guys at the Nomis Foundation perhaps call the spark, right? Yeah. So you have to create this, and once it's ignited, but finding a new direction in the mess of all the document, the data, yeah, the talks, whatever that you have, is, you know, there's some kind of cognitive overload, but then once you have time to let that sink down and get into order and you get a sort of bird's eye view of the problem, or you see the angle, and then I mean, scientists, researchers are so excited that once they found the right angle, you just can't stop them because that's why they are scientists. There's this desire and curiosity, but yeah, it's so sad that this is not happening so much in universities, because universities are, you know, this is about transmitting knowledge and disciplines, but what you learn new is necessarily at the border, and so it's difficult to do at the same time this exploration and this exploitation of knowledge, which is the core business of university.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It picks up on a theme, and maybe one last thing on that is, picks up, you know, at the core of the problem within my discipline has been this notion of transmitting and transfer versus translation, you know, and a lot of what we've talked about today is that ability to translate ideas. Could I pick up on an image? I started this by talking about an image that was important to me from Donald Shawn in his book, The Reflective Practitioner, and this idea of the mountaintop and the swamp, you know, and I saw my role coming to here as being, you know, telling the story of that 18 years of work that I did in terms of sort of moving from the mountaintop to the swamp and translating that. It almost feels to me that the bit that I learned here was that I needed to go back to the mountaintop a little bit to make, you know, I had done a lot of work down to the swamp, okay, and I'd become so swampified that I had, and I needed to not only find a space between theory and practice and to be in that translator role, but I needed to go back to the mountaintop to be able to have those conversations, to be able to see, literally see what I could not see when I was so in the swamp.
And this is so important because people in the swamp need the map. And so what you get when you're up there is a global vision, which requires a bit of time and serenity to see. I remember there's in one of his books, Michel Serres wrote that there's two ways of knowing a territory. So one is to have the aerial map, and the other one is to go through all the roads, right? And people in the swamp, I mean, they're down there, but they hardly get the bird's eye view. And to make a map, a good map, you must have been down there. You must have been inside, which many of our colleagues haven't done. And this is why your work is so precious, because so many people teach management and have never been in charge, and etc. So, but then just knowing how to navigate the roads doesn't give you the direction to go really far, and so you need somebody who draws a map, and I think that's actually what you've been doing on your work on the theory of practice. So because everything we perceive pre-formats everything we know pre-formats what we perceive, and so if you give the people the right map and the right knowledge, then they will be able to interpret what they have much better. And so I think that's what you've got from being so much traveling in the swamp from the others, and know how to talk to people who are feet in the water. Then you can tell them in the proper way what's the map. So I think if the Institute can have helped a little bit in this, we've done our job.
I think the Institute has done more than that. And one of the things I said a little bit earlier, I thought I came here to think. I thought I came here to think at a certain level. I thought at a different level. And it actually did more than that. I changed a lot of what I do as a consequence, some very profound changes. So, Sadi, listen, thank you. Thank you very much for this. And thank you at multiple levels, especially for this experience. So, thank you.
Thank you for having come, because the Institute is just a place, but what happens is what people bring to it. So thank you, Barry.